So let's start by introducing yourself
All
and
right.
letting people know what you do.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Winnie Monaco. I'm a chiropractor here in Orange County, California. And I primarily work on people, but I also work on pets. I actually studied with a couple of different doctors that did some animal adjusting after grad school. And the method that I use was one that was developed by a veterinarian. So I
Okay.
use a little tool and adjust primarily dogs, sometimes cats. They just don't need it as much.
So what kind of issues would you be adjusting for?
So I feel like if you're going to do more like acute injuries, it's better for you to be in a veterinarian's office
Right.
because they need to obviously see and screen
Yeah.
the pet first. So I get referrals from vets for like older dogs, a lot of like little arthritic dogs, lots of like low back and kind of
Okay.
disky issues, and dogs
Right.
respond well to that kind of adjusting.
Okay.
So mostly the older population.
Yeah.
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 So when I developed this line of CBD products for my patients about 3 years ago, and I wanted to do a clinical line that kind of encompassed all the things that they would need and all the herbs and other things that I recommend. So of course I did a dog product because they need it as well, especially in that older dog population. It tends to really help with their joint aches and pains.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think CBD is a booming product. There's a lot
For
of
sure.
products coming out with CBD. You know, it's like
It's huge. It's
it's
everywhere.
huge right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think because of that, there's probably a lot of not fake stuff, but you know.
Absolutely. There's actually
Yeah.
a lot of, because of companies like Amazon, there's no real standard. So you
Yeah.
are seeing a lot of there are some products that are actually counterfeit, but really low quality
Right.
product without any lab testing, without any quality control. So that is an issue. And
So what are ways that people can look out for that?
so one of the ways to look out for, if you're getting a quality product and not just wasting your money, there's a few things you want to look for. You want to make sure that the product is full spectrum. Now, if it says THC free, it can't be full spectrum.
Okay.
So so the CBD is coming from a hemp plant.
Yeah.
Cannabis is where you get the higher THC, and that's the product that you're going to smoke or ingest to get high. You're not
Yeah.
going to get any psychotropic effects from a CBD product that's full spectrum.
Yeah.
But it should have 5 major cannabinoids in it. So it should have CBC, CBG, CBN, that little dose of THC, and then CBD. So for it to be full spectrum, it needs to have all 5 of those. One of the reasons being, when you get even those 5 cannabinoids are still one of only 113 compounds found in the extract. So other things would be omega-3, omega-6, vitamin E, other terpenes, fatty acids. So you need all of those things together for it to be absorbed properly and actually be more
Right, because the
effective.
body will metabolize the entire.
It's made
Yeah.
the receptors. You have different receptors in the body, CB1 and CB2. And so those compounds are going to interact with those receptors differently. Plus there's something when you take it full spectrum called the entourage effect, where the sum of those things is really better than any one individually. So that's a big one. Look for full spectrum. If it says isolate, avoid.
Okay.
Now only an isolate is going to be water soluble. So
Right.
again, if it says it's in water, it's an isolate, it's just not worth anything.
Yeah.
You might as well just forget it. And there's a lot of false information about an isolate's better. Absolutely, that's false.
Okay.
100%. There's no research to back that up. That's one thing, full spectrum. So another thing would be suspiciously high milligrams. So you'll see a product and it'll say, 100,000 milligrams in a, small bottle. That's impossible. You could never get that many milligrams into the bottle. Plus it would be a fortune. And I've seen some of these higher dosages for like $20. There's nothing in it.
Yeah.
There's just no way. So that's another one. And then the other thing is the color. So when you look at a CBD product, it should have, this one's still sealed. So we'll look at, It should be a yellow to an amber color. If you draw it up in the pipette there and it looks clear, you have an isolate. So that's another big one. Those I think those are the three biggest.
So, yeah.
Is that you want it to be full spectrum. You want to make sure the milligrams aren't ridiculous in a reasonable range. Like the People product that I have is about 500. This is total volume of hemp in this one. So it says 1,000, but that's not how many milligrams of CBD. Okay. That's total volume hemp.
Okay.
And that's another.
Because you'll see that, especially in People products, where you'll have the same size of bottle.
For sure.
But then the concentration of CBD increases, and so does the price.
Right. And it should. As you get more CBD in the product.
And the way it was explained to me was just in the beginning, if you're not sure what your dose is, start with a lower concentration.
Absolutely.
And then as you work your way up, and in the end, you'll end up saving money because that one drop will have much more concentrated CBD.
So all of my products are formulated to give you an effective dose with 10 drops minimum, but that might not be the right dose for you. Right? You and me
stick to the dogs, but I guess it's kind of the same thing though,
it's right? Absolutely. So the ECS, that's the endocannabinoid system. So let's talk about that because it is the same.
Right, and you mentioned receptors. And I think that's what people sometimes get confused with. How does CBD actually work?
Right. So this ECS was actually discovered in the 90s. Nobody even knew that cannabinoids had these effects, and the endocannabinoid system wasn't discovered until then. And what that is a network of receptors, CB1 and CB2, primarily in the brain, the immune system, the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. Now, these receptors help to regulate many vital functions like the immune response, anxiety, sleep patterns, appetite, inflammation, and then pain sensation. So that's a lot of different systems. Now that ECS system that you and I have is exactly the same ECS system that your dog has. So they work the same way and it affects them the same way. They have these receptors as well. So when you think about all the different places.
So anywhere where there's a receptor, there's a possible effect from CBD.
For sure. Yeah, there's definitely a homeostasis effect when you take CBD. So cannabinoids, the reason they're called cannabinoids is that's the first substance that was discovered to interact with these receptors. And you have endogenous cannabinoids that your body makes as well.
Right. Yeah. So like I think anandamides.
Anandamide was the first one discovered. Was anandamide.
Right.
So so it's an amazing system of receptors, and you have this ability to enhance all of those systems when the receptors are bound to a cannabinoid.
So what are some of the more common uses for dogs?
I think the most common use for dogs right now seems to be the anxiety or the anxious dog. Okay. And then I see definitely people get that, I've got a dog with a little bit of arthritis or an older dog, and they understand that it helps them as well. Okay. So I feel like those are the two biggest uses. As far as any research into more serious things, I think there are people doing, again, research, but most of it really at this point is anecdotal, right? Which is better, honestly, if we get into, I hate to even think about what the testing for some of that will look like, right? Because then you're...
Well, I think in science, it's always a bit of an issue is that if like in my opinion, if you have a huge amount of anecdotal evidence, usually you can trust it.
I feel the same.
If 5 people tell you something, that's one thing. But if 1,000 people tell you something, I think you need to start trusting that, even if the science hasn't caught up yet.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, this is a substance that's been around, hemp's been grown for, years and years and years all over. One of the reasons that I don't get my hemp extract from America, it's grown in the Netherlands, is because they've never used pesticides in their growing processes. So because I was developing a clinical line for my patients, I tend to see patients with, complicated medical histories. And even if I'm not directly treating something that they have, like Parkinson's or MS, I'm not their primary doctor, but I'm treating them in the effects to their neuromusculoskeletal system. I can't give those people a product that has contaminants in it.
For sure. Yeah.
So That's another really big area to think about as well, is where is the hemp coming from? Is it coming from somewhere clean? And then how is it processed? So heat extraction destroys a lot of the product. So what you really want to look is the gold standard is CO2 extraction.
Okay.
So my hemp is CO2 extracted actually in Germany and then brought here and then sent to a lab where my formulas are actually put into place. So there's lots of other herbs and essential oils in the people formulas. The dog formula is just the full spectrum CBD. It's bacon flavor, but no animals were harmed. I would not do that. It's a soy extract.
Okay, so let's walk through the process of using this product for a dog. So for example, my dog Callie has separation anxiety. So we wanted to find a way to help just obviously not knock her out, but just maybe chill her out a little bit so that when we leave her alone, she's less likely to get into trouble.
And that is something people ask me, well, what's my dog going to be like? Your dog shouldn't be totally out of it, shouldn't be an altered state, but will seem very chill. So how big is she?
She's 35 pounds.
She's 35 pounds. Okay, so the smallest dose, the pet product is easy because we can just tell you by weight. 0 to 25 pounds, you're going to do a minimum dosage, which is like 25 ml. So this is marked. So it's going to be like about that much. Now she's in between. So I would start with that dose. Now the second range is 25 to 50. Well, we know she's on the lower end of that. So I would go to the lower end of that. I might go somewhere in between 25 and 50 and then see how she does. There are people though that say, oh no, my dog's good on the lower end of that spectrum and you don't want to waste it. So I always tell people try a little and go up from there.
But I think what you just said is important is that it's more about not using more than you need. But if you were to use more than you need, it's not going to harm the dog.
No.
Right?
So
and
that's
the great part about these products.
It is so great. So there's no toxic limit. Most of the research that I've looked at, and again, you're getting like wildly different reports. Most of it for a human looks like a maximum dosage or absorption of about 75 milligrams. So after that, your body's just going to excrete the rest. It's not going to go anywhere weird. It's not getting stored. This isn't fat soluble. No one's ever OD'd in the history of the earth. Now, if that isn't good anecdotal evidence, I don't know what is. Nobody's ever died from any cannabis or hemp extract. So same with the dogs. They're going to get what they need, bound to the receptors. Everything else is going to get eliminated. And again, you really want to be on that lower end of your dose. A lot of the research that's currently coming out says that if you're taking too much, you also might not get the right effects. So it's really good to find your sweet spot. And every person is going to be different. I know that. Every dog's going to be different. And so every dog's going to be slightly different. I do have people say, oh gosh, my dog needed less than that and she was fine, or sometimes a little bit more. I definitely think, I've got some doggy patients that are big dogs, over 100 pounds, and they definitely need like a bigger dose.
And I think also some dogs, it may just not work all that much.
So
like my other dog is very intense. He has some intense aggression issues. He has some intense behavioral issues. And I find with him, it just doesn't seem to make a dent, and I've accepted that. But I also don't know, do you think that it can be an instant thing, or maybe I need to dose them on a more regular basis in order for the body to kind of start connecting with it more? With
people, I definitely think that's true. I encourage my patients, like, listen, don't just take it one time. Again, this isn't a pharmaceutical.
It's
not going to affect you the same way like if you took a sedative would.
100%.
So I do think it's worth trying for a few days to get that proper dosage. With people, for sure that's the case. And then there's this other part of all of this, is that there is a genetic test to see if CBD even works on you. I've not had anybody want to go through it, like the expense. It's like, just try the CBD and see if it works.
What happens.
But I'm assuming that that's probably true in animals as well.
But I also think what you touched on also is that hemp oil is also very high in omega-3s, right?
Omega-6.
So you're taking this product for one reason, but there's probably a whole bunch of other positive effects that you're getting out of
all these other good components.
So even with your dog, maybe you're taking it for their separation anxiety, but guess what? They're going to get extra omega-3, which is
Right.
going to be good for a whole bunch of other things.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And the other terpenes and everything. So yeah, I think we're basically, if you think about how new that is to discover a whole system in the body, right?
Yeah.
1990. Okay. I mean, we're just going to keep learning more and more as the years go by about what all the really beneficial effects. I think we've really just scratched the surface.
So even to make it simpler for people who are still a little bit unclear about how to use it with their animals. So let's say I want to give it to my dog. What's
Sure.
a good way to deliver it? Because yeah, it's bacon drops, but I'm not going to get my dog to just sit there with her mouth open while I
Some
drop
of
it.
them will.
Maybe.
Some of them
not
will.
my dogs.
Okay, so my best friend's dog, Scout, shout
Yeah.
out to Scout there, she'll take it directly.
Okay.
But you don't have to do that. That's the best effective way to
Right.
do it, is just to do that. Now with people, the most effective way is the tinctures are
tongue.
formulated to do under the tongue.
Yeah.
That's the best absorption
Right.
rather than injecting it directly,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
no one's recommending,
no,
by the
no.
way. That's not a good idea. That's 100% absorption, right,
Right.
if we injected it.
Yeah.
A tincture is about 40 to 50.
Right.
Ingesting through the stomach, again, you're going to lose a little bit.
Right.
So you can put it on a dog treat. At the last doggy event Mutt Scouts had, I was passing some out, and I just put it on the little dog treats.
Yeah,
You can
okay.
put it in their water. Again, you're going into the stomach, so you're going to lose a little bit of it, but that's okay. You could, give them a second dose,
And
or
if
just know that.
you're, let's say you're leaving the house and it is for separation anxiety, which I think a lot of people deal
Mm-hmm.
with, how long in advance would you recommend, or do you give it right before you leave so that that the effect kind of lasts?
I mean, I would
Does it really
probably,
matter,
I would
or-
make sure I knew, first of all, before I left the animal, what their proper dose was. So
Right.
I always tell
So
people,
test it
listen,
while
test
you're
it
at
while you're
home.
home. Test
Yeah.
it the night,
Yeah.
don't just do it on the fly. And then
Yeah.
I would probably do it a little bit before, so that when I left, they were already feeling
already-
the effects,
yeah.
and they were being pretty chill already.
Okay.
I think that seems to be the best way to go about that. But I think people who are really in tune, one of the things I love about all of these products is it really forces people and pet owners to get more aware and in tune with what's happening.
Yeah.
Feel your body, feel the effects. It's not the same as a pharmaceutical where you're drugging yourself or an animal. So it's really more about like really feeling what you need, and same with your dog, like getting in tune with what's happening with your pet, right?
Right, and I think that brings up a good point where, so I had my dog Hunter, who does have some pretty serious behavioral issues. And the first thing we did was Prozac, right? And that's a pharmaceutical, right?
Sure.
That's going to
Different
have
effect.
much
Yeah.
different effect. But
Yeah.
even that didn't really seem to work as well as we'd hoped. And then we explored CBD and we explored different things. But the one thing I think people don't realize sometimes is, look, that's not going to replace training. It's not going to
No.
replace
Yeah.
the work you invest with
sure.
your dog. In other words, if your dog has separation anxiety, CBD is not the cure all.
No,
you might
you'd have-
also want to work on the behavior
For sure.
that goes with any type of behavioral issue.
It's the same with my
right?
patients. Yeah, I have a product for pain, and I
Yeah.
have a product for healing, and I have a product for sleep. But I mean, you have to address the other components of health in the body, right?
Right.
If you're taking something CBD that's targeting inflammation, but your diet's full of inflammatory agents, that's not good.
Right.
Or if you're taking Calm because you're anxious, or have trouble sleeping, you have to address the other parts
Right.
that are affecting you and causing stress.
So I
as
think
well.
CBD, like any other behavioral modification drug or anything like that, it's a combination of factors,
Absolutely.
right? Yes, use the
Yeah.
CBD, but also work on the training
Sure.
and use CBD to facilitate that training.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And even when I use, so I have 2 lotions that are topical as well. Even the pain lotion and the heel lotion. I mean, I'm still getting in there and doing the
Right,
work on the people.
100%. You're just
Yeah.
helping the process.
Yes, you're just
using these
helping it
products.
along, and it really, really has been amazing, especially for even some of my patients who do have to take pharmaceutical grade pain relief, which
Yeah.
there's a place for that.
Of
you
course,
there's-
yeah.
But it's allowed a lot of them to take less of it
Yes.
and less frequent.
Yeah.
And that's so much better. I mean, we all know you can't, even over-the-counter NSAIDs, you can't live on those. And a lifetime of taking them even once a month will have effects.
Right.
And we're now, that research is definitely in front of us now.
Yeah, and
Where we can
even-
say, with certainty, no, you can't, take ibuprofen, every week or every month even for a lifetime. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of extra work for your body.
Yeah. Or even with dogs, you know, when my dog was on SSRIs and I asked my vet, I said, what do you think about CBD? He's like, well, as a veterinarian, there's not enough research for me to say yes or no. But what I do believe, he said, is from my own experiences with CBD, is that even if the dog is on SSRIs, give them the CBD.
Sure.
Because it's only going to, it can't hurt.
It's not going to
hurt. It can only help.
Yeah,
it can only help. So I think whether it's SSRIs or something like gabapentin or a lot of the drugs that people use to calm down their dogs, adding the CBD might just make the process a little bit easier for them. It might allow you to reduce some of that medication to a more manageable dose.
Right.
And I think it's not something, like you said, that's going to harm the dog. So there's no
I don't really see a downside. The only sad thing is, again, seeing products or people get ripped off.
Yeah.
So I will encourage people, if you look at, like my product, I had them all they're all independently tested by a lab. So you could go on my website and there's a tab that says lab tests and you can click on it and actually there's proof. Okay, there's this much CBD, there's this much THC. You want it to be there in that minimum dose. If a product doesn't have readily available lab tests for you to look at, that would be suspect. And I'm hoping that the industry really raises the standards. And then the other thing you might want to consider that I considered in my product is the bottles that they're in and making sure that they're not coming from somewhere like China with contaminants and things in there. Again, because I was developing a clinical line with my patients in mind, I really thought about all of those things that I kind of harp on them about too, and getting contaminants in your body and sourcing these things. This is the cleanest product I could possibly come up with in bottles from America. I believe the guy's in Idaho, this bottle company.
Nice.
I think so. I think it's Idaho. And really making sure it's clean.
Yeah.
A lot of what's on the market is flooded with snake oil. So
but that's a lot of things.
I don't want to get sued by Amazon because
No.
they'll win.
Yeah.
But you can they're not checking
against
they're not checking their
just,
products. You could get a product and develop
I think that's everything. Right?
For sure.
I think in any product it's up to you as the
It
consumer.
is up to you to be smart.
Don't trust the seller.
Yeah.
Right.
And if something
it's
looks like a ridiculous
research.
price for what it is, that's a big one.
Yeah.
But go on the website of any of the products you're thinking about. Make sure they have lab testing. Make sure they tell you where their sources are.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And send an email to that company and ask them. Can you give me more information?
And I welcome that. I get people that hit me up on Instagram or, and I want to make sure I'm readily available for people to help them with dosage or any of that. So any company you're buying something from should be willing to do that.
So to finish this up, where can people reach you and find your products?
Okay. So my website is drmonaco.com.
Nice.
That's got all of my products there. I'm on social media, Dr. Monaco Wellness on IG and Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll put that information in the comments.
Okay.
So
yeah.
people
Great.
can find it easily.
But yeah, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of,
Awesome.
and I'd love to help anybody who has questions or concerns too,
Awesome.
and maybe even talk with some vets. I know veterinarians have different restrictions on what they can say. I'm kind of in the sweet spot as a chiropractor.
Yeah.
People expect me to be on the fringe, so I get to stay there, and it's great actually. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, and
You're welcome.
look forward to helping you spread the word.
Absolutely.
About CBD.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome.